Sure. Okay. The limits of augury. They belong to something large, I thought, the bones, amid shell hunks of a creature sawn clean and now with the weft exposed. I imagined approximate pebbles of myself washing up like this, portending, as microbes perused the parallax slow vault of an archway, themselves and the tide bearing witness to all the cathedral things we miss in our marrow. Yeah, this poem, I read this one several times. This was one that I had read because I had read through the issue, and then I like went back to look for this one specifically. I was like, what this? I was, it stuck in my brain. Once again, this is a very short poem, but so much is said here. One of the first things that I sort of came back with was in the last two lines, witness to all the cathedral things we miss in our marrow. And I thought about that for ages, cathedral things, because that's not a normal descriptor of how you would describe a body. That's not a normal descriptor of even how you would describe a feeling. But to me, that was both sort of holy and scientific, because if you think about DNA structure, if you think about bone structure, if you think of atom structure, it's very much architectural in a way, similar to how a cathedral is. There's lines, there are things that need to be there in order for the building of your body to be supported. But also cathedral very much has spiritual, religious, holy connotations, and thinking, okay, there's things to your body, there's things in your blood, there's things in your marrow that are beautiful and stunning and absolutely breathtaking that you probably missed, that you wouldn't even know about until perhaps a piece of you washed up on a shore 100 years from now, and someone else was looking at the bone structure in the marrow and thinking, oh my gosh, this is beautiful, this is an amazing discovery, etc. And that's just such an interesting thought. I also looked up the word weft. So this is in the first stanza, the bones, so it says sawn clean and now with the weft exposed. I didn't know what that was. That is in reference to weaving. That's in reference to a loom. So the structure of a loom, when you're like putting together, a piece of cloth, that's the strings that you're putting on top of the wooden pieces. And that was just really interesting, that obviously a lot of this is not the beautiful part, this is the structural part, this is the underbelly of what this creature was, right? These are the very essential parts of it. If you think about like, I don't do a loom, but I have done a tiny bit of stitching where it's like the front of it is very beautiful, but if you turn it around, it's a huge mess, right? And so it's sort of like taking off the surface and you're looking at what the absolute bare essentials are. And thinking about, you see a bone washed up on the shore and then you're imagining a piece of yourself, and then what that would say about you if someone else only had a piece that had none of your pretension, none of your good attitudes, none of your good moods. It was just a piece of your, I don't know, a bone, a piece of your soul maybe, and what they would think. So yeah, this was one I kept coming back to. So I'd love to hear any other thoughts on it, because there's certainly there's a lot in this one.
I also looked up weft, and I was glad I did. I love the sound of the word. I was already sold on it before looking it up, and then I was like,
yeah,
okay. And in thinking of the title, The Limits of Augury, being able to tell the future through bird flight, my guess was that this was a bird who had died at sea and had washed up on the ocean, and she's kind of examining this bottle or this body and thinking of her own death in life. And I'm a poet. I'm contractually obligated to love poets writing about their own death. As well as merging the spirit and science, which, just like you said, I think she did a really, really lovely job of that. Oh, and back to the weft. In my mind, I imagine that this was the underside of a wing, and maybe the bone was exposed, and you can see where
right.
the feather the feathers are inserted into the bone and held in place, and that it, creates this kind of woven texture. Yeah.
There is such interesting language in this poem. So weft is one example. The cathedral things as an adjective. Cathedral is interesting. Just the augury in the title is one I looked that one up just to make sure I got the right idea. So it was interesting in itself that the two definitions of augury, divination from auspices or omens, and the secondary definition was just simply omen or portents, and she used the word portending in the poem as well. So just taking the idea of the omen, if we take the discovery of this object on the, I don't even know, it's on the beach, I'm assuming, right? As an omen, it kind of, again, goes back to that issue theme of the impending autumn, and of course what comes after that. So it just kind of it gave me the feel just on the emotive level of like, there's something coming beyond this experience is not just this experience, but it is indication of something more, even if it's just maybe on the seasonal level, on the personal level. There's a lot of layers possible, I think, in this one.
Yeah, well, and similar to what you were saying, to go back to the title, augury means omens, right? And to me, that means mystery. And it's, I mean, another way you could read this title is the limits of mystery, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like if you're looking at a bone on a beach, kind of like there's both mystery and there isn't. Like you're wondering about, death, but then also like, okay, there's very much a literal creature who died, and then now the carcass is here, and that's kind of the end of it. And so I think that's just an interesting way to think about it, because it's almost like the beginning and the limits of mystery when it comes to a piece of yourself that would be washed up somewhere. So that's
right.
just really
I'm glad
fascinating.
glad you went there, because that was just my first impulse, is to like connect it with this like feeling of like, here's what's coming. This is a sign of what's coming, and it's not good. But of course, then it's the limits of that. It's the limits of that sign as an omen. So there's just that kind of layering of, is it an omen, which is a sign of something maybe
right
dangerous, or
is this an omen, or is this just a dead bird?
is it just a dead bird on the beach? Yeah. So that's just a great title in itself. So that's the importance of a good title. Yeah, Chris, I think you're going to say something.
Oh yeah, as a fan of incorrect readings, my first run through, I made two fatal errors. I read the title and I was sent astray because I read The Limits of Augury, and in my head I heard auger, A-U-G-E-R, which is a digging tool. It's supposed to pull things up. So then when we get to bones and we get to the structure of DNA and marrow, I'm thinking fossils, I'm thinking digging up the past, and so then I get to portending as microbes. And I didn't know this until I actually heard it read out loud. My dyslexia pronounced that as microbes pursued the parallax slope both of the archway. And of course, if it's perused, that sends me in a completely different direction, much less active. I was imagining the microbes as a life force that are chasing and decaying and rapidly bringing up the weft. And as soon as something dies, the microbes are in pursuit to bring that thing back into the ground to be dug up again. And now hearing what I assume to be a much more accurate reading, I still have the same basic feeling. So even my incorrect analysis of the poem, I think, got me to kind of that right headspace.
Yeah, but that's the great thing about that language, though, because the auger, as I was almost expecting to get that definition that you were suggesting in when I looked it up, but it's spelled different. It's a different word. Yeah. So I was kind of anticipating it, but it's a differently spelled word, a different word altogether, but you get the sound of it. So it's there. It's, you can't really totally eliminate that layer of it, I don't think. And the same thing with
kind of all of the pieces that you looked at have a kind of a religious or spiritual component, more so than other times we've combined these. And so once I started looking for that, I was like, yes, fortune telling, soothsaying, and made a very clean connection to the Centurion me, which I'd be a little curious to talk about if we have time, but if not, that's fine.